Precisely. In life, when things don't happen precisely as we want them to, we try to find reasons. We try to find excuses. And we even invent some laws to justify what happened. Precisely at 6:41 p.m. on the 12th of November 1996, two aircrafts collided in midair. A Saudi Arabian airline flight crashed on to a Kazakhstan airline flight over the airspace of India at the height of 14,500 feet. 351 people died on that day. There were no survivors. Despite having precisely defined air corridors, and despite having the most precise instruments on both aircrafts as well as on the ground, and despite having well-trained pilots and air traffic controllers, these two aircrafts managed to be at the same spot in the sky, at the same height, at the same time. Another example. You're driving home from work, and you're driving in a highway. There are 6 lanes, and you're stuck in the traffic. You look around to see that all 5 other lanes, they are moving. But the lane that you are in, it's at a standstill. You wait a few minutes, the situation does not improve. So you change the lane, move on to the next lane. The moment you move on to the other lane, you see that all the 5 lanes, including the one that you were just in, have started moving. But the lane you are in now is at a standstill. Happens to me all the time. Another example. A cold front has passed over Victoria, and the Weather Bureau has forecasted 6 days of rainfall. For 5 days, you carry along with you an umbrella, not a drop of rain. On the 6th day, you curse the Bureau, leave the umbrella at home, and set out on your journey. 5 minutes into your journey, it starts raining. So in all this and many similar situations, we try to think, what happened? Why we end up with these unfavorable outcomes? And most of the time, when we are unable to find a good reason, we blame it on something. We blame it on our destiny. Or we say, bad karma happened. And sometimes we say, the Murphy's Law just happened. Now, Edward Murphy, he was a colonel at the United States Air Force. And in 1949, the US Air Force, they were carrying a series of experiments. Now, the idea of these experiments was to find out the effects of rapid acceleration and deacceleration on different parts of the human body. Now, Colonel Murphy, he designed an experiment. Now, in this experiment, a human volunteer was strapped to a rocket engine. Now, this rocket engine ran on a pair of rails. So, the volunteer was tied to the back of the engine, and 16 small sensors, we call them accelerometers, they were fixed to the different parts of the volunteer's body. Now, the idea of the experiment was to run this rocket engine at a very fast speed and then bring it to a sudden stop. So, on the day of the experiment, a volunteer was present and he was strapped to the back of the engine. And then the 16 sensors were fixed to his body. Now, these sensors, they could be fixed to the body in 2 different ways. So when the sensors were fixed, rockets are fired and off went the engine. 500, 600, 700, 800, 1000 kilometers an hour it reached. And at that moment, the brakes were applied and it came to a sudden stop. 2.8 tons of force went through the body of the volunteer in a matter of few seconds. So when the engine stopped, he unbuckled himself from the harness and staggered out. Eyes bloodshot, blood oozing from his ears and mouth, and bones broken in multiple parts of his body. It was a pity sight. But Colonel Murphy, he ran to the harness. He wanted to look at those sensors. And to his surprise, when he looked at those sensors, all 16 of them showed 0. They haven't recorded anything at all. On close inspection, it was revealed that the technician who was supposed to fix these sensors, he has fixed them all the wrong way around. The suffering and the bravery of the volunteer was in vain. And to this, Colonel Murphy exclaimed, he said, if something can be done in 2 or more ways, and if one of those ways will bring in a catastrophe, there will be a person who will do it exactly that way. So the important word in his saying is the word if. He said, if something can be done in 2 or more ways. What if something can be done only in one way? Take an example. Think about the power plug that you have in the electric appliances that we plug onto the wall. There's only one way that you can plug that in. What if they have designed it so that it has 2 identical pins and put a small label in the middle saying this side up? 50% of the time, you and I would have tried to plug it in the wrong way. Take another example. Compare your house keys to your car keys. Now on your house keys, all the bumps are on the underside. And remember, how many times have you tried to insert the house key the wrong way around? But it doesn't happen with your car keys. There's only one way that you can put them in. So following the same principle, Murphy redesigned his sensors. He made them such so they can be plugged only in one way. And he repeated the experiment. And he achieved the results that he wanted. And the United States Air Force went on to build faster and faster jets. But it seems, as humans, we have a tendency, maybe it's something with our psychology, that when we achieve something good in our life, when we achieve a goal, we don't spend too much time rejoicing it. We don't celebrate it as much as needed. But instead, we look at the next goal and we start working for that. But when we achieve failure, when we are faced with failure, that is when our minds start racing. We try to think why we ended up with failure. And we try to find reasons. And most of the time, when we are unable to do that, we try to blame it on something. We try to find an excuse. We say the Murphy's Law happened. Now it seems that Murphy's Law has acted upon itself because this law can be interpreted in 2 ways. We can interpret in a positive way, the way that Murphy wanted us to, eliminate the multiple possibilities at the earliest and end up with the result that we want. Or we can interpret it in the negative way, the pessimistic way, using it as an excuse. But we very well now know when there are 2 or more possibilities of something happening, yes, we all ended up with the negative way of using Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will, and precisely at the wrong time. Precisely.